This is Total Warhead. In this video, I want to showcase how to build a Defender Protector in a Total War Saga Troy. So Defender Protectors are one of the two best campaign effect heroes in the game, along with Warlord Mentors. So we'll get into the details as to why that is, but the primary summary of what this guy is good at is in combat is for armor boosting skills along with missile unit buffs, just like crazy. So by increasing more armor, you can help missile units, if you give it to them, exchange better with other units that are shooting them, but primarily boosting the armor of your own melee units will help them against non-AP damage units to really resist damage in combat. Always make sure when you recruit heroes to get Descendant of Zeus to get really good buffs for the hero. Note that the Descendant of Zeus is acquired by having 300 or more favor with Zeus, and then you recruit a hero while that favor is above that magnitude. In terms of why he's good for campaign, he has access to Generous Host, which gives you in the province you are plus 20 growth and plus 3 to happiness. After that, this is the key skill of this game for heroes. Generous Host favor will give you plus 5 to favor with God of the local temple while garrisoned in this region. So say that in the game there are at the moment 9 total gods, and you put 9 Defender Protectors or 9 Warlord Mentors in provinces that have one of each type of temple. That would make you increase how much favor you gain per turn by 5. Note that when you start the campaign, you actually decrease in favor by 10 per turn. So you're basically offsetting the initial favor per turn loss across all gods by 50%. Excellent to go for this. If you already are not losing favor across the gods, or you're okay with how much you're losing, then you can go for Generous Host happiness and growth to get an additional happiness while garrison, which gets very redundant when you get to the late game, as happiness is no longer an issue. But getting more growth is always very crucial. So you can get a total of plus 40 by going for both of these skills. Another thing you can do is to also get minus 15% to upkeep cost of all heroes faction white with stalwart upkeep. I don't think this is worth it, because sure, you can lower how much food upkeep the heroes are gonna take up, which is really valuable. Well, until you get to the mid to late game and food is no longer an issue and you're making food up the wazoo, this really becomes very redundant, and this is just way too valuable to pass up. Aside from that, the other good skill that he has access to for recruiting agents, and it's alert. So we just made a video, and you can watch it in the channel, for how to build Defender veterans. They also have access to this skill. So does Defender Protector. Put 5 heroes that have this skill active in one province, and you can get agents recruited at rank 26, and you can get easily other agent rank up across other royal decrees or Apollo buildings, making you get to the max rank of agents when you recruit them of 27. The third campaign skill that he has access to is Wise. So Wise gives you plus 400 food per turn faction wide, which means you already offset the 225 of upkeep that the hero gets, kind of further making redundant this the skill that we talked about that lowers upkeep cost of all heroes by 15%. And then you go for either more stone or wood produced faction wide per turn. So the 3 most valuable resources in the game, the ones you end up running short on, are wood, stone, and gold. This guy already helps you offset 2 of these, which are 2 resources that are always an issue from early to late game, and you get a pretty good extra food per turn faction wide from the initial level of Wise. Note that all of these give you influence, so once you level it up, you get plus 5 influence in this province, which is excellent to get, because once you get above 60% influence, you get a lot more resources produced in the province. He's also okay, not great for recruiting units, because he gets more local recruitment capacity, but he doesn't get access to extra recruit rank for units recruited, so this is not one of his strengths. Now, what makes him good for armor boosting? So, he has access to a skill called Immovable Force, which is a 40-meter AoE. He has to be dismounted in order to use this, and this will give plus 25 armor for units in this AoE at a reduction to speed of 60%. So if you have a very staunch line of spears holding the line, you can make sure that they take less damage while your missiles behind them inflict a lot of damage on the enemy. Next, we want this guy to be really strong in combat to make sure he resists damage as much as possible. He is not as good at it as the Defender Veteran, but he can further increase his armor more and more so he can resist base damage from the enemy at a higher probability. So this is where Fortify comes in, but he basically becomes an immovable turtle with both of these skills activated. Now, he also has access to Heraclean Resolve, which can let him get unbreakable and immortal if he gets in a bad situation, and we can go for the upgrade that gives 1000 more HP healed per turn, like what I would select if I'm playing the Defender Veteran. And the last skill that you can select, it's either a melee chariot or a battle veteran. I wouldn't go for the chariot because you would lose access to a movable force, and then you can just use battlefield veteran to make sure he heals passively with 5 HP per turn, which I think is a pretty good overall increase or passive skill to get. So he will move slow once a movable force is activated and he's not on a chariot, but he will inflict a lot of damage, or sorry, he will sustain a lot of damage in the battlefield and self-heal pretty well. Aside from that, the other skills that I would go for this army or for this hero is Protection of Hephaestus to increase the armor of all units in the hero's army. Extremely good for missile units and for frontline units. And then for the upgrade, you decide, do you want to make your frontline stronger, plus 5 armor to spear units, or your missile units plus 8? Missile units for you can become extremely powerful compared to the AI. I would say that you should probably give this to your spear units to make them stronger. Next, I didn't go for alert because most of the time you only need to get this once and you don't want to waste it on a hero that's going to get to very, very high rank and you want to use to the late game. So instead, I went for Asclepius's method to get more casualty replenishment, and I go for the allied territory upgrade. After that, I go for, or aside from that, I go for Armed by Hephaestus. So when he is in a blob trying to hit units, I give him more melee damage so he hits more units, not heroes, while in combat. And then I tend to want to give him or units as many bonuses as possible in sieges, so I go for the siege upgrade to help them sustain more, especially if he has to climb the walls. Next, I go for Prayer to Apollo to boost up the missile damage of missile units. The Defender Veteran has access to 2 skills that boost up missile units. Defender Protector actually has 3 skills that he has access to. Prayer to Apollo, the Defender Veteran does not have access to, so it's good to go for this. Now, given that, where is it? Fortify costs rage per, or 4 rage per second to utilize, you probably want to make sure that you get Bloodthirst, so you get more rage gain when in combat to basically try to make sure you sustain how much rage you're losing to have Fortify active as long as possible. The thing about rage is that the more rage you use in combat, the faster you build Aristea. So if you have a skill that consumes rage over time, you have an easier time getting to Aristea than waiting, a long time to potentially build up your rage, and then accidentally you get out of combat and then bam, you lose all that rage instead of using it, which will help you actually build up your Aristea. Aside from that, Heraclean Resolve costs 80 rage to utilize. So say you're using Fortify and then you keep building up your rage, bam, you could pop the Heraclean Resolve to make him immortal and also heal him with 1000 more HP. Next, you can go for Prayer to Athena instead of the extra range for missile units if you want to make your frontline even stronger, and I always go for the upgrade for sieges. I want to make sure my missile units are even stronger or strong as possible, so I gave Follower to Artemis here, and then more range for archer units is the upgrade that I go for. If I'm playing Ithaca or a faction that doesn't really have good access to bow units, then I would go for the Javelin upgrade. Or if I'm playing a faction that is just basically Slinger Heaven, or I don't want to recruit or archer units for this army, for example getting Slinger units, then I wouldn't go for Followers of Artemis, I would go for Prayer of Athena. A situation where you might see that is when you play Ajax and Treasure Bowmen are expensive. You can go for his faction unique elite Slinger units and therefore make his frontline even stronger. Aside from that, I also go for Blessing of Hebe, and I go for the stamina upgrade. So these stack up fatigue reduction one above the other, so you can make sure the hero does not fatigue that fast, and you actually should keep track of how much stamina you've lost with heroes and with units, because your statistics get heavily penalized, especially defensive units. So, or sorry, offensive units. So just make sure you keep reducing fatigue as much as possible so you don't affect your unit stats that much, or they won't get affected that fast in combat. And then immovable force is one that I mentioned. In terms of the upgrade that I would go for, this one was a hard decision for me. So the upgrade, or the base skill, has a 40-meter range, and if I want to go for the upgrade, I would either go for the radius to make it from 40 meters to 60 meters, which should be good enough to get your entire front line. And I think this is more valuable than getting the charge defense of 200%, because if you have really strong missile units behind you, there's a very good chance a lot of the enemy is not going to be at full HP when they engage you. So a lot of unit models should not be charging at you when they reach you. But if they do reach you, they're gonna inflict a lot of damage. So I think making sure that you can cover more area in case the missile units don't hit as many units that engage you will help you apply more armor to your front line, so it can fend off any units that have more HP that didn't get hit that much by missile units. He also has access to the War God's Call. Now, if we remember the Defender Veteran has access to Sunder, which works really well with War God's Call to pull a very elite unit into this guy to decrease its missile resistance and armor. So he doesn't have access to Sunder, but you can still use the War God's Call to pull an elite unit into him and then pop Fortify so he can resist more damage, and then your missile units, or what do you call it, melee units, can get on this unit and affect it big time. In terms of equipment, if you go for a lot of archer units, missiles, go for Apollo and Artemis. If you're not, get more melee based cult idol items like Hephaestus or Ares. If you get sword or axe units, always go for Aphrodite for the extra battle captives take him of 10%, Hera for the extra growth in the province. So this means that this guy can get up to plus 90 growth in local province if you select the generous host skill that I selected. And since I want him to have a staunch line of spears or frontline units, I go for the Athena cult item to further boost melee defense of spear units. For equipment, for weapons, there are a good number of weapons that boost the melee attack or melee defense of spear units, and they're common. Select any of them and you can help boost up your front line even further, as you also boost up their armor. And then for him, make sure he can resist more potential damage in combat, so get him armor or shields that help reduce or increase his melee defense and armor. So I think that is it for this guy in terms of everything that I want to showcase a Defender Protector for. I really want to thank you for watching, and I sincerely hope to see you on the next one. Bye bye.